my name is Eric Hunt. My role as part of the build of the many great worlds of Harry Potter for theme parks was senior production designer and creative producer. I was first asked to work on the Wizarding World of Harry Potter back in 2006. I was a production designer at that time, as far as my title is concerned, and that was my role to oversee everything Hogwarts. So I had an intimate responsibility to take all the drawings and such that were created for the film-based Hogwarts Castle and integrate those into a working architectural marvel so that guests could enjoy Hogwarts every day, 365 days a year, and guests of not just one or two or three walking through the castle, but for thousands. So this Hogwarts is a working machine, and my responsibility was to ensure that first it was safe, it was fun, and also that it was faithful to the films. And to ensure that that was all in alignment, there was a lot of my involvement with architects, scenic vendors, our own art directors, and with my own direction as well. And all of that aligned with what Warner Brothers wanted it to look like, their vision, and being faithful to how JK envisioned it. And also, really importantly, with Stuart Craig and his team that created the original Hogwarts through all the film and show set drawings. And even at that time, they were actively working on the other films. So there was a lot of collaboration, a lot of changes that Stuart wanted to make for Hogwarts that were in the films that he wanted little nuances made for the original, the first one over at Universal Orlando Resort. How did I get this opportunity to work on this? It goes way back, long before I worked at Universal as a designer. I went to art school. Fast forward, I did want to go to art school, and when I concluded my works over at the Art Institute, I went out to LA and I did some work in feature film, building miniatures and such. Came back to the East Coast, and I ended up working for a construction company, ironically, that were tied to Universal, and that was Royal Pacific Resort Hotel. And I was working there as a project designer and made some connections with the folks at Universal, and had an opportunity a couple of years later to work on a new theme park, and was there as a model maker. And with my experience in painting and illustration and such, my portfolio was such that they decided to bring me on full time. And it was an honor at that time. I was excited just to be an employee there, but what was even more excited, just 2 years into being there, we had the request to work on some things that had a code name at that time. Couldn't tell us what it was until afterwards the content was revealed one day inside of a closed conference room meeting. And that was my title at the time as production designer. So I think it was more of a chance that the company took on me, and I think that it certainly paid off. I was really eager and hungry to really do something cool, and this was certainly beyond my expectations. I had a lot of learning to do. I had to really get caught up on what it is to be a Potter fan and who is this kid, Harry Potter. So it was a crash course in that, but over the years working for the brand and working for Universal, I certainly learned a lot more about Potter. And I'm certainly not, I don't think, seasoned as all the folks and followers on MuggleNet, but I've been very grateful and been blessed that not only afterwards working on that, I was on the advisory board for all the other lands of Hogsmeade and Hogwarts throughout the globe. We have luckily been able to build not just the one in Orlando, but there's the one in California, in Japan, and now there's one also in Beijing. So all of that said, one of the coolest things that I'm happy to have been a part with is that for the animated portraits that you see inside Hogwarts, I have a patent on those, created that original design and that idea. And I am also the creator of the magical bench that everyone has ridden on that's a Potter fan and has gone to the park. So my typical day was every morning getting together with our creative teams to ensure everyone had all the content and the direction that they needed for each day. But more importantly, a lot of my typical day of working was building drawings that were, I guess, piggybacking from the original drawings that the team had created in Leavesden, and providing those drawings that I created with all the modifications that were needed with steel structure and life safety equipment, egress and access for operational personnel, integrating all those components, working with architects and then vendors and such to ensure that everything that were designed and what we adjusted to accommodate those requirements were still with the end product as you see today going to the castle. Many folks walk through the castle and they don't realize all of these complications that really were happening in the background, but were resolved with a lot of great team members and a lot of great support groups and creatives as myself, and with the other artists, and certainly with the team from Leavesden. And they also were occasionally coming out to the site to see all the work that was done. So it was a lot of collaboration. Typical day was a lot of finger pointing. I've been asked that a lot. Did I ever get to visit the sets in the movies? And certainly I have. In fact, I have many great memories of some times that when I were there, coincidentally, they were shooting some really famous scenes. One in particular was when Bellatrix shot her wand out at Dobby, and then Dobby went away. I remember being on set and I was looking into Bellatrix's eyes, and she glanced at me a time or two because there's a lot of people around the set. And let me tell you, even when off camera, she was very, very intimidating. But such a great actress, and she's a pleasure to talk to. And it was great to really get to meet her and all of the other great actor and actresses. I think another fun time was, and I mentioned Lucius Malfoy's cane behind me. He walked up to Dumbledore's office one day, and I'm on set looking at Dumbledore's office and the allure and the grandeur and just in awe of being on that set. And I had just gotten up from Dumbledore's desk, sat in his chair, and I'm still standing there. And who do you know? Lucius Malfoy walks through in character, and he's with his two daughters, and then he sets them in Dumbledore's office chair to show them what it's like to be in the films and on such an iconic set. Those were two notable ones. I mean, there's been many, many more, but it was certainly a pleasure to be able to be in Leavesden at the time when they were shooting parts for the Great Hall, Dumbledore's office, and one of my, I think the most favorite of all of those that I just mentioned was being able to walk down the streets of Hogsmeade Village when it was already decorated with all the snow on it, unscathed by anyone, and it was after shooting hours. And I'm walking with the supervising art director, Alan Gilmore, along with Stuart Craig, the production designer of the films, and our advisory for the park. We're walking down through the Hogsmeade Village, through the streets, and no one else is there, just us in the snow. It was surreal. It was like us just before they say action, but just only us three. It's great times over there. Things that are exciting and were exciting and that I really loved. When we speak specifically to recently as Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts, one of my favorite parts about that build, in parallel with wrapping up Transformers for Florida, I started as the creative producer for Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts, and I had total responsibility in my role to oversee everything that was happening and how it looked on the outside, and also everything that's happening on the inside. So when we speak of the inside, we first think about the bank's interior and then all the goblins. And I can tell you, when I first visualized how a goblin would work inside the banks was with me in front of a camera, acting like a goblin with all these lengthy fingers and talons and teeth, and trying to stamp and trying to move ledgers around. And that was the guiding principles for the vendors that created the animated figures, which are the goblins. Had a lot of time dedicated to the main goblin, and also with the goblin over at the Money Exchange. Those are all really cool characters, and the goblin at the Money Exchange was really fun for me because it's very unique to all the other goblins that are in the bank, because we followed a lot of the looks of the goblins that were in the films, that we could see them in the banks. And lastly, with the goblins as well, they were like my kids. I had to bring them to life, and I'm so proud of them, even down to the point where all the fabrics were all hand selected and custom made from vendors. So they're all very unique and very special to me. So that's one of the highlights of my time on the brand. working for Diagon Alley and on Gringotts. The greatest challenge that I feel was part of what we were delivering as a tactile environment that you would be able to walk through. What was referenced from the films, folks that have seen the films, and then those that have read all the books, there's a difference of what these places could have been. So the challenge was aligning everyone's expectations or trying to create something that overall was good for the majority, I would say. And I think that despite that challenge, the end product really met, I would say, most everyone's expectations. There's nuances from the books that we included in some of the rides, some of the lands, some of the buildings, the spaces, whether it be Three Broomsticks or Wise Acres. There are those nuances for everyone to say that, yeah, they did this, they did that, they didn't do this right, but they got that right over there. So as a majority, I think, as the greatest challenge was that, but I think we certainly overcame that with the end product. So I wish that we just had more space. And if we had more space, there would be more opportunities to go to more places. I think that with an unlimited budget, and I know that recently there has been an opening of the Forbidden Forest. There's that opportunity that imagine being able to go through an environment of the Forbidden Forest, whether it's daytime or nighttime, even in a climate such as Orlando's where it's hot most of the year, but being able to be in those environments, no matter what time of the day it is, be able to celebrate parts of Hogsmeade when it's actually even cold outside in a hot environment. There are so many things that could be more tactile that I feel we could do had we had all the land and probably all the money and all the time to do, because I think everyone takes away something in their minds that's not built over at Hogsmeade, not built in Diagon, not part of Hogwarts. I think there's always room to continue to build more. The sky's the limit. What is my favorite memory of working on the theme parks? For me, was having an opportunity to share this with my wife, with celebrities that she otherwise would have probably never met. Having an opportunity to sit down in the Hogshead pub and having a brew with Tom Felton, and having my wife present and she being a part of that, because she's been my greatest support over my career, watching me travel internationally and be gone for days, weeks, months at a time. I think that's what's really been pretty exciting for me. And also to have a working office where it's just the daily grind. It's not the prettiest place in the world, but then you would have CEOs and celebrities and those folks that would come over to our offices and be involved and be excited and just be really energized about the cool content that was created. And also just saying thanks to everyone. I've seen that over and over so many times with all levels of those that have been part of this journey of the Wizarding world. I think that the parks too are just really doing a wonderful, wonderful job of keeping it up and keeping it true and faithful to where it was when it first opened. So that's what makes me happy, and I'm really excited about just being part of all of it. Even as recently as Hagrid's motorbike adventures, and being able to just to see it and at a very high level at that time in my capacity, and see it being developed, and just having a hand on all of this stuff to date. It's been really a great legacy, a lot of fun. I think words of wisdom is that, and it doesn't want to be so cliche where people hear it and have heard it, but there is truth into following your dreams. I was an artist at heart from 7 years old, if I remember my first drawings and such. And with perseverance, it has paid off. I came down to Florida with only a few $100 in my pocket 25 years ago with a family that was still in North Carolina, and I followed my dream, and I think I'm still living the dream. There's a lot of great opportunities that are still before me. There are a lot of things I'm working on now. And I think the greatest thing about my career and having working with all the folks at Warner Brothers and all the folks at Universal is that we're all still great friends to this day. Every once in a while I'll put a plug in and try to reach out to Tom. He gets quite busy, Tom Felton, but we stay in touch when we can. And I still am a really great friend with Stuart Craig and Alan Gilmore. We just talked actually a couple of days ago, Alan and myself. I have to certainly put a shout out to Roxanne Gray, who have now retired from Warner Brothers with consumer products. And I mean, love her to death. And she and I stay in touch, and the whole team over there, we stay in touch as we can. And it feels like the projects have never really closed out. It's like we're always still working on them in some capacity. Seeing them excited about what we're doing, I think that was what was most inspiring for me, is that, you know, everyone was having a great time doing it, and everyone put their heart into it and created just such a magical place and places for all guests to enjoy. And I think it, you know, for all the accolades and all the people you meet and the places you go and the travel and you know, whatever benefits you get out of it, I think most of it, if not all of it, is about just the love of the brand and the love of being creative and the love of saying, you know, I was a part of that at whatever capacity. You know, everyone gets their opportunity to put their name on it. It doesn't matter if you had the opportunity to say I was the production designer, or creative director, or art director, whatever. Everyone that has been part of that has equal opportunity to talk like I talk about this, because it's something that you just never forget, and so I'm really proud of that.